Hey everybody, Jeremy here, and E3 is over. It's done. We can all go home now, which is where I am. And now that I'm home, I can share with you some of the games that I played at the show, and one of the first ones that I played was The Order 1886. This is developed by Ready at Dawn Studios in Sony Santa Monica. It's going to be a PlayStation 4 game coming out in 2015. It's a single player game, but it's unique in the way that it looks and also the atmosphere. It takes place in 1886 in an alternate history of London where these half-man, half-beast type creatures have sprung up and they're causing all kinds of trouble. And you're playing as a knight, not a traditional knight with a sword and armor and things like that, but you are playing kind of like a steampunk knight, a guy or a girl who has this really cool weapons that can harness electricity and other elements that will go along with the steampunk era. And one of the most unique things about the Order 1886 is the way that it looks. It's not a traditional 16 by 9 aspect ratio. It's actually more like a panoramic view. And if you were to look at it on the television, those black bars will be more noticeable than it would be if you were looking at a movie, because that's how compressed it is. And at the same time, it runs at 30 frames per second, which these days, if you have a game that doesn't run at 60 frames per second, people get upset and they go, oh no, everything should be 60 frames per second. But that was a creative choice to have the game run at 30 frames per second because the developers wanted this cinematic look, and it's really noticeable once you look at videos of the game, especially if you play it. Because film is traditionally shot at 24 frames per second, but that wouldn't feel too good to play in a video game, so they upped it to 30. So it brings this very cinematic, almost, kind of smooth. It's not very smooth, actually. Like in a game like Call of Duty, something that runs at 60 frames per second, everything is fast. But when you bring it down to about 30 frames per second, then that's when you're able to see more of the motion blur. And that, coupled with that unique aspect ratio, that really panorama, kind of thinner than we're used to aspect ratio, really makes this game stand out as being different than most anything else I've seen. And when they sat us down to play the game, the televisions were quite large, but we were sitting really close to them, like inches away. I could probably put my hand out like this and touch the screen. Really wouldn't be the ideal way to play a game that close to a television, but I think what they were trying to do was sort of take our minds away from that unique aspect ratio and just put us right down so close to the television that we couldn't even notice the length of the black bars in the top and bottom. And that actually worked because I really wasn't aware of it while I was playing. And the developers said that this was the first time, or I guess the second time since it was day 2 of E3, that we were able to play the game. People outside the studio were able to play the game. And the demo that we played, it was pretty short, and you kind of understand why this is the very first hands-on showing of the game, because it was a very restricted and guided experience. They really were driving home the weapon that you would be using, where the traditional fire button, you sort of sprayed like a cloud, like a whitish, grayish cloud, and they had to tell us, when you shoot that at people and they're not dying, you might be wondering what's going on, this gun doesn't work, but you had to press the L1 button to shoot like a spark into that cloud, and when you did that, it would ignite and it would rain thermite down on your enemies and set them on fire. That was like the primary weapon, and for the first few minutes, that's the only thing that we were using. We were behind a wall and some guys were shooting down at us, and really relied on your character to shoot that thermite cloud up there and basically set them on fire. And you did it so many times so that it was really nailed in your head. Like, this is how you use this weapon. And it has a cover system. It's not sticky cover. You don't automatically run into it. You have to press, I believe it was circle to get into cover and X to leave the cover. And you can swap weapons if you want, but the primary weapon for that character was the one that caused that thermite cloud. And the look of it all, it's a very gray game. It's a very darkish looking game, and I know some people have given it a little bit of flack for that, for being one of those two-tone, gray, dull, shoot 'em up type of games. But I think that if we can just sort of look at that as being a part of this overall unique aesthetic of the Order 1886, and just considering that time frame in London with monster type people running around, steampunk, I'm not really in my head, I don't come up with the colorful world of BioShock Infinite. I think that design choice lends itself well to what they're trying to do, especially that cinematic motion at 30 frames per second, that unique aspect ratio that they're using for the Order 1886. And I think that helps it, that those dull tones help the game. And it really helps to bring out some of the lights that are on your character, because it's sort of steampunk, so you have armor, but it's just a little bit of light, a little bit of glare here and there, and I think it really makes it stand out, and it makes everything pop just a little bit more. Another mechanic with this game that they wanted us to know about was, it was sort of this slow motion, like a gunslinger feature that you could do. I can't remember what it was called, but it was sort of like Red Dead Redemption, like when you filled up the meter, and then when you go to shoot the guys, you would zoom in and you would be able to just pop that guy, shoot that guy, then shoot that guy. It was kind of like that. And when that happened, the screen turned really brown and it sort of zoomed in to your character really, really close. So you can see maybe some of his face, but mostly his arm and his gun. And there were no reticles that I can think of, but it just really zoomed in on him and zoomed in on the enemies that you were fighting. And then you would shoot, flick the right analog stick, he would move to the other guy, you shoot him, move the analog stick, shoot that guy, and that's how that feature worked. I think it will take me a little bit getting used to in that short demo. I did it a couple times, and each time I was kind of wondering whether or not I was doing it correctly, but it did look cool. And I also want to point out, the enemies that you were fighting in this demo were not the half wolf or half beast, half man type creatures. These really just seem like normal people, like part of a militia, like they might have been peasants. And it didn't seem like there was anything supernatural about them, but they were shooting us with traditional weapons. And yeah, I'm guessing that the supernatural stuff might come a little bit later, or at least that just wasn't the focus of this particular demo. And to bring up BioShock Infinite again, that was the vibe that I got. Shooting regular people, looks like they, just came out of their houses. It didn't seem like they were soldiers or anything, just normal people who are against us for some reason. And that kind of reminded me of BioShock Infinite too, because you're just fighting normal people and not necessarily monsters. So even though the demo is very early and the Order 1886 is not coming out until next year, I'm remaining optimistic about it, because when I first saw it, I didn't think that it was real, just the way that the game looked and the way that the motion was conveyed to us. That alone, I think, makes it unique, one of the most unique games of this generation. If you don't like the shooting part, if you don't like the gritty look of it all, besides all of that, it really is doing something different. And there's no way I can get a grasp of what's to come based off that short demo presentation that I was given. But it did play pretty much like a typical shooter. I wish I didn't have to press circle to get into cover and X to get out of cover. I would like it if it was just X for both things, just so that my mind can work better, and then possibly you can free up that circle button for something else. But other than that, I enjoyed it. Really short, but I just want to share with you my thoughts on the Order 1886. You can pre-order it right now digitally on the PlayStation Network if you want to, but I personally would not recommend that because it is too far off. And plus, it's digital, so it's not going anywhere. So just hold off. Just know that my preview, my expectations of the game so far are good, and I'm looking forward to playing more and hearing about the Order 1886 more in the future. So, until next time, I'm Jeremy, and I will be back later with another E3 preview.